The iron was a frozen brand against my throat. Each step the guards forced me to take sent a fresh jolt of cold through my bones, a cruel reminder of what I was. Property. A war prize from a forgotten conflict sold and resold until I ended up here, in the heart of the Black Fang Fortress, on the most important day in a generation. Thornhaven was not just celebrating, it was erupting in joy. Silk banners, the color of fresh blood, snapped in the wind from every tower. The very cobblestones were buried under a carpet of autumn blooms, and the air thrummed with music and the roar of 1,000 gathered wolves. Today, Alpha King Kale was to take his queen. Today, the rival Silvermane pack would unite with the mighty Blackfangs through marriage. And I, Ilara, was here to pour wine and remain invisible. I was dragged into the sun-drenched courtyard, and my breath vanished. The stories did not do it justice. It was a sea of color and power, a deafening wave of sound. And at the far end, on a platform like a sacred altar, stood 2 empty thrones. Then he appeared. Alpha King Kale descended the stairs, and the crowd parted like water before a stone. He was not just a man, he was a force. His hair was as dark as a starless night, his face all harsh, beautiful angles. In armor blacker than midnight, he moved with a lethal grace that made my inner Omega wolf whimper and cower. He was terrifying, he was magnificent. And in exactly 57 minutes, he was going to die. The vision crashed into me without mercy. My knees gave way, the festive world dissolving into a horror of crimson. I saw blood, rivers of it, pooling slick and dark beneath the white silk of the ceremonial platform. I saw it splattered across the bride's silver gown, dripping from King Kale's mouth as he choked, his golden eyes wide with shock and betrayal. I saw the knife, small and deadly, hidden within the bride's bouquet of white roses. I saw the ceremonial cup, its rim coated with a poison clear as dew. I saw archers, their faces shadowed, positioned high in the eastern tower, arrows nocked and aimed at one heart. And I saw him, Lord Cillian, the bride's own brother, standing over the fallen king, a smile of triumph twisting his handsome face into something monstrous. The vision released me, and I gasped, the cheerful music sounding like a mockery. No, not again. This curse, this unwanted sight that showed me truths too terrible to bear. I had spent a lifetime burying it. My own family had sold me to be rid of the mad Omega who spoke of death before it came. To speak was to invite suffering. I should be silent. I should pour the wine, clear the plates, and watch the king die. He was not my king. This was not my pack. I owed this stranger nothing. But the image of the light fading from those fierce golden eyes, it caused a sharp, unexpected pain deep in my chest, a fracture in the wall I'd built around my heart. The ceremony began. Lady Celine descended, a vision in moonlit silver, her smile radiant. 3 steps behind her, Lord Cillian carried the ceremonial chalice, his steps measured, his expression devout. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I watched as King Kale took Celine's hand. I watched the High Elder raise his arms. I watched Cillian step forward, the poisoned cup gleaming in the sun. My body moved before my mind could scream in protest. I broke from the line of servants, weaving through shocked nobles, dodged guards whose hands snapped at empty air. The iron collar around my neck marked me as less than nothing, but I ran as if my own life depended on it. I reached the base of the platform just as Cillian extended the chalice with a reverent bow. "Stop!" The word was a raw, torn thing ripped from my throat. The music died. 1,000 eyes turned to me, a ragged creature in servant's gray, daring to blaspheme against a royal union. The Alpha King's gaze found mine. It was like being struck by lightning. The weight of his power, his fury, his absolute authority was a physical pressure that threatened to crush me to the stone. In his eyes, I saw my death. But it was too late to turn back. I fell to my knees, my voice a desperate whisper that somehow carried through the dead silence. "You are being betrayed, my king. The cup, it is poisoned. Your bride's brother, he means to kill you before the sun sets." The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. Then Lord Cillian laughed, a smooth, dismissive sound that echoed in the stillness. The creature is clearly deranged. Everyone knows the Omegas from the fallen Ashwood pack are prone to fits and fantasy. Guards, remove this slave before she further stains this blessed day. Rough hands seized my arms. I didn't fight them. I kept my eyes locked on King Kale's face, pouring all the ounce of my terrible truth into his gaze. For an eternity, he just stared. His expression was unreadable granite. Then, slowly, his burning gaze shifted from me to Cillian. Something shifted in those golden depths, a flicker of cold, ancient intelligence. "The cup," the king said, his voice quiet yet clear as a blade leaving his sheath. Cillian's perfect smile faltered. "My king, surely you don't entertain the ravings of a—" "The cup. Now." A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through Cillian's hand. As he passed the chalice, King Kale took it, raised it to his face, and inhaled deeply. His expression did not change, but when he spoke next, his voice was the sound of mountains breaking. "Lock the gates." The command rolled over the crowd, leaving shock in its wake. "No one leaves Thornhaven until I have the truth." And just like that, the wedding was over. The future king and queen were pulled apart. As chaos erupted in shouts and confusion, the guards dragged me away, not to pour wine, but into the waiting darkness of the dungeon. I had traded one form of invisibility for another, far more dangerous one. I had whispered my truth, and now I would pay the price. But as the cell door slammed shut, one thought echoed louder than the fear. He had listened. The darkness beneath Thornhaven was absolute. It was not merely an absence of light, but a living, breathing cold that seeped through my thin dress and settled deep into my bones. The cell was carved from the same black rock as the fortress above, a place where sound died and hope felt like a distant memory. I huddled against the rough wall, my arms wrapped around my knees. Above me, the world had shattered. Muffled through layers of stone, I could hear the echoes of chaos, shouting, the swift march of boots, the occasional ring of steel. The perfect ceremony had exploded into accusations and fear, and I was the spark that had lit the fuse. I waited in the consuming dark, wondering if my reward for speaking would be a swift execution or something slower. Time lost all meaning. It could have been hours or days when the heavy door groaned open. Torchlight flooded the cell, blinding after the nothingness.
3 figures
I shielded my
stood
eyes,
silhouetted
blinking
in the
against
doorway.
tears as
I
shapes
recognized
formed
the
in the
massive
glare.
one first. Gareth, the king's battle-scarred commander. His face was a stone mask. He stepped aside, and my blood turned to ice. Lord Cillian walked in, his fine clothes untouched by dungeon grime, a smile playing on his lips that didn't reach his cold eyes. 2 guards bearing the Silvermane crest flanked him. "The king, in his generosity, has granted me the right to question you," Cillian said smoothly, his voice oily in the small space, a gesture of goodwill between our packs. My heart plummeted. The king knew. He had to know. He'd smelled the poison. "He knows nothing," Cillian hissed, as if reading my mind. He crouched before me, so close I could smell the spice on his breath. The cup contained bitter ceremonial herbs, little Omega. Harmless. You have made a catastrophic mistake. I saw it, I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. You saw nothing. His hand shot out and closed around my throat, not to crush, but to threaten, his fingers a vice of promise. You are a mad, broken thing, grasping for importance, and when I am finished, everyone will know it. The pressure increased, cutting off my air. Spots danced before my eyes. Release her. The voice was winter-given sound. Cillian's hand froze, then slowly withdrew. Alpha King Kale filled the doorway. He had changed from his ceremonial armor into simple, dark clothes that made him seem no less formidable, only more real. His golden eyes swept the cell, lingering on the marks on my neck, then on Cillian's guilty hand. My king. Cillian rose, the perfect picture of composed concern. I was merely persuading her to speak truthfully. I permitted questions, not assault. Sometimes persuasion is required for creatures like this. Was it? The king's tone was flat, yet it carried a finality that made the air tremble. Leave us. Cillian's mask slipped. My king, surely I should be present to hear her lies. Did I stutter? The silence stretched, thin and deadly. Finally, with a stiff bow, Cillian retreated, his guards following. Only Gareth remained, a silent sentinel outside the open door. The king turned his full attention to me. In the flickering torchlight, he looked tired. The shadows under his eyes were deep. You disrupted my wedding, he stated. You accused my ally of treason. You made me look like a fool before two packs. I swallowed, forcing the words out. Yes, my king. He took a step closer, and I fought the urge to shrink back. This close, his presence was a storm, pine, steel, and raw, untamed power. My healers found no poison in the cup. My king, I know what I saw. I did not say I doubted you. His words stopped my breath. He studied my face, my collar, my trembling hands. Cillian had hours to switch the chalice before my men secured it. The conspirators are not fools. They will not be caught so easily. A fragile, terrifying hope flickered in my chest. Then you believe me? He was silent for a long time. I believe someone wants me dead, he said finally. His gaze was heavy, weighing my soul. And you are either part of their plan or the only one who tried to stop it. He turned to leave, then paused. Gareth will bring you food and a blanket. Tomorrow you will tell me everything, every detail. He looked back, and in that moment, the mask of the ruthless king slipped, and I saw something else, a sharp, calculating curiosity. And if you are lying to me, Alara of no pack, then pray your execution is swift. The door closed, plunging me back into darkness. But this time, the black felt different. It felt like a cocoon, not a tomb. He had not called me a slave. He used my name. He believed me enough to lock his own gates and defy an ally. I touched the bruises on my throat, left by Cillian's fingers. I had made a deadly enemy, but in the heart of the Black Fang fortress, I might have just found the most dangerous ally of all. Dawn did not reach the dungeons, but Gareth came as promised. He brought bread, cheese, a water skin, and a thick woolen blanket. He said nothing, his scarred face impassive, but his actions were precise, almost respectful. Later he returned and led me up through winding stairs into a tower room. It was small, with a narrow window barred with iron, overlooking the misty mountains. A prison still, but one with light and air. A woman was waiting for me there. She was tall, stern, her dark hair streaked with silver, her posture radiating an authority born of a lifetime of service. "I am Marin," she said, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "Head of the king's household. You are to be presented before the court." Presented? "Both packs will hear your accusation. They will judge you." She held out a simple gray dress, cleaner than my rags. "Lord Cillian demands your execution for slander. Half his delegation echoes him. The king has not yet declared his position." She helped me into the dress, her fingers surprisingly deft. Then she produced a length of soft leather and carefully wound it around my iron collar, hiding the cruel metal. "The court will try to destroy you," she said quietly, her voice for my ears only. "Cillian will twist your words. Your only chance is the truth, the pure, simple truth of what you saw. Do you understand?" I could only nod, my throat tight. The great hall was a cavern of judgment. Hundreds of wolves lined the walls, their whispers a sinister chorus. The Silvermanes glared from one side, a wall of hostile silver and blue. The Blackfangs watched from the other, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open contempt. On the dais, King Kale sat on his throne of black iron. Beside him, in the queen's chair, sat Lady Selene, dressed in mourning gray, her face pale and stained with tears. I was led to the center, a single beam of light from a high window painting me like a specimen. "The Omega Elara stands accused of disrupting a sacred union and slandering a noble house. She claims the gift of prophecy." He paused, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "Some call this madness. Today we determine which." Cillian stepped forward, his smile ablade. "My king, this creature was captured from the feral Ashwood pack. Her own people sold her, warning of her delusions. She invents fantasies to feel significant." Murmurs of agreement rippled through his followers. "I saw what I saw," I forced my voice to carry. "The vision showed blood on the platform, poison in the cup, archers in the towers. Yet no poison was found." Cillian spread his hands, the picture of reason. "You offer nightmares as evidence." "The proof," I said, the words leaving me in a rush, "would have been the king's corpse." Gasps echoed. Cillian's eyes flashed with pure venom. "You dare!" "I saw you," I continued, locking eyes with him, pouring every ounce of my vision into my words. "I saw you standing over his body. I saw the triumph on your face as he died at your feet." "Lies!" Cillian shouted, his composure cracking. "This is madness. You cannot entertain this." "She will be tested." The king arose. The room held its breath. He descended the steps until he stood before me, so close I could see the flecks of amber in his golden eyes. "You claim the sight of truth. Prove it. Tell me something only I would know, something no spy could discover. Prove your visions are not fantasy." Terror closed my throat. My gift did not work on command. It came unbidden, a cruel, unpredictable tide. "I cannot control it." "Then you are useless to me." He turned away. The dismissal was a death sentence. Desperation, sharp and wild, clawed at me. I lunged forward without thinking, my hand closing around his wrist. The vision was a lightning strike. A young boy, small and frail, crouched in the ashes of a burned-out longhouse. The air was thick with smoke and grief. Bodies lay silent around him. Soldiers with a strange crest laughed as they rode away. The boy clutched a single, half-charred toy soldier. His eyes, already a fierce gold, were dry. They held no tears, only a vow etched in fire. I saw a name, carefully carved into a blackened wooden beam, the last standing piece of a home. "Anya." I gasped, staggering back. The hall swum before me.
The king was staring at me, utterly still. "Your mother's name was Anya," I whispered, the words torn from a place of shared pain. "She carved it herself, the day you were born, into the beam above your hearth." My voice broke. "I saw the fire. I saw you. I am so sorry for what you lost." The silence was absolute. Then chaos erupted. Killian shouted about tricks. Celine wept. But the king did not move. He looked at me as if seeing me for the first time, the walls around his eyes crumbling to reveal the scorched earth of the boy within. He believed me. I had proven my gift. And as Killian's hate-filled gaze promised retribution across the roaring hall, I knew proving it might have been the most dangerous thing I had ever done. In the days that followed, I existed in a strange, in-between world. I was no longer in the dungeon, but I was not free. My room in the East Tower had a lock on the outside. Gareth, or one of his trusted warriors, was always nearby. "For your protection," Merrin said tersely, "and ours." The fortress was a simmering pot about to boil. The Silvermanes were confined to their quarters, the wedding indefinitely postponed. Investigations churned quietly, fiercely. Lord Killian moved through the halls like a silent predator, his smile never warming his frozen eyes. Celine kept to her rooms, a portrait of betrayed innocence. I kept my head down. I requested work, real work, in the kitchens and laundries. Merrin argued, but I insisted. Scouring pots and folding linens kept my hands busy and my mind from circling endlessly around golden eyes and the terrifying weight of a king's fragile trust. But the visions did not stop. They came as they always had, sudden and devastating. A young kitchen maid brushed past me, carrying a tray, and I saw her stumbling on the wet northern stairs, her neck snapping on the stone below. I said nothing to her, but later that day I found Gareth. "The north stairwell, near the scullery. The third step is loose. Someone will fall." He looked at me for a long moment, then gave a single sharp nod. 2 days later, I saw a stable boy, no more than 12, being kicked in the head by a spooked draft horse. I told Gareth about the boy's fondness for sneaking sugar pubes to the temperamental black stallion. The next morning, the boy was assigned to polish tack, far from the stalls. Word began to spread. It started in whispers among the servants. The Omega Seer. She knew about the step. She warned about the horse. They looked at me not with fear of madness, but with a dawning, wary awe. Then came the vision of the child. I woke from a dead sleep, my heart pounding. A little girl with corkscrew curls and a gap-toothed smile. Mara, the head cook's granddaughter. In 2 days, she would wander into the old, disused ice house. The rotten door would swing shut, trapping her in the dark, freezing tomb. They would find her too late. This time, I did not hesitate. I went straight to Merrin at first light. I described the girl, the location, the outcome. Merrin's stern face grew pale. She left without a word. That afternoon, I saw from my window as a team of carpenters boarded up the ice house door with thick new timber. Later, in the lower courtyard, I heard Mara's joyful shrieks as she played tag. I had saved a life, not a king's, but an innocent's. The feeling was a warm, fragile light in my chest. For the first time, my curse felt less like a burden and more like a purpose. People began to seek me out, cautiously. A laundress asked, her eyes red, if her soldier husband would return from the border patrol. A young guardsman wanted to know if his ill father would recover. I could not summon visions for them. I could only tell them with painful honesty. I cannot see on command, but I will look for them in my dreams. I listened. I offered the comfort of being heard. It was a new kind of power, and it humbled me. The summons came on the 7th night. Gareth led me through private corridors to a heavy door carved with wolves and crescent moons. He knocked once and left me there. Enter. The king's private study was a surprise. It was not a place of cold stone and weapons, but of worn leather, towering books, and maps weighted with stones. A fire crackled, painting everything in warm, dancing light. Kale stood at the window with his back to me, a silhouette against the night. "Close the door." I did. The quiet was profound, broken only by the pop of the fire. "You saved a child this week. You prevented a death in my household," he said, still not turning. "I only told Marin what I saw." "And asked for nothing in return?" He turned then. He looked exhausted, the lines on his face deeper in the firelight. The untouchable Alpha King was gone. In his place was a man who carried a mountain on his shoulders. Why? Because she was innocent. Because I could. He moved closer, and I saw the shadows in his golden eyes. "My advisors think you are a spy, a brilliant long-game plant to shatter my alliance and leave me vulnerable. And what do you think, my king?" A faint, weary smile touched his lips. "I think you are the most puzzling person I've ever met." He reached out, and I flinched, but his fingers only brushed a loose strand of hair from my face, his touch startlingly gentle. "You did not reason to warn me at the wedding, no reason to save a servant's child, yet you did both." The visions do not ask for reasons, they just are. It is a burden I have carried alone. His hand dropped, but his gaze held mine. "When I was a boy, after the fire, I was taught that trust was the precursor to betrayal, that mercy was a flaw, that to rule you must stand alone." He looked into the flames. "The old Silvermane Alpha Idic who took me in taught me that. Killian's father." The irony hung between us, dark and heavy. "I have spent my life building walls, Ilara, keeping everyone out." His eyes found mine again, and the vulnerability there stole my breath. "But you walked through them as if they were made of smoke." "I did not mean to." "I know." He took a step closer. The air between us hummed with a tension I couldn't name. A sharp knock shattered the moment. Gareth's voice, tense, came through the door. "My king, Lord Killian demands an urgent audience. He claims to have new evidence." Kale's expression hardened instantly back into the mask of the king. As he strode to the door, I caught a glimpse of the corridor behind Gareth. Cillian stood there, his pale eyes finding mine over the commander's shoulder, and in them I did not see defeat. I saw the cold, calculating gleam of a man who has just drawn a winning card. The game was not over. It had only just begun. The evidence Lord Cillian presented to the packed council chamber was masterful. It was a tapestry of lies woven with just enough truth to choke on. A servant girl, her face swollen from tears, swore she saw me meeting hooded figures by the postern gate, accepting a purse of silver. Letters, bearing a shaky script that was supposedly mine, outlined a plan to discredit the Silvermanes and plunge the packs into war. The clincher was the dagger. Soldiers pulled it from a hollow space beneath my sleeping pallet. Its blade, the court healer confirmed, was coated with a rare, slow-acting poison, wolfsbane, the very same rumored to have been meant for the wedding cup. "The creature played a long and cunning game," Cillian proclaimed, his voice ringing with outraged virtue. "She warned of a plot to make herself indispensable, to sow discord from within. A spy, sent by a hidden enemy to destroy us all." I stood once more in the center of the room, the iron collar openly around my neck again, my hands bound. The warmth I'd begun to feel in a fortress turned to ash. The servants, who had looked at me with awe, now watched with doubt and fear. Marin's face was pale, her lips pressed into a thin line. Even some of the Black-Fang nobles shifted uncomfortably. "The evidence is fabricated." My voice sounded small against the weight of his lies. "By whom?" Cillian sneered. "By the frightened girl you threatened? By the guards who found your weapon? You are the only poison here, Omega." I searched for Kale's face. He sat on his throne, his expression unreadable, a statue carved from ice and shadow. He had not yet spoken. His silence was worse than any accusation. Celine rose from her seat, a hand pressed to her heart. "My king, my brother only seeks to protect your kingdom, as our father protected you. This seer has brought nothing but chaos. For the peace of both our peoples, justice must be served." Her plea was a masterpiece, painting Cillian as the loyal defender and me as the root of all evil. The tide was turning, fast and deadly. Cillian's allies clamored for immediate execution. The Black Fangs were divided, confused by the sheer volume of proof. Then, the doors at the back of the hall crashed open. Cale rose to his feet. Not soldiers, but people entered. The kitchen maid I'd seen on the stairs, her arm in a sling. The stable boy looking nervous but determined. The laundress whose husband was at the border, and Mara, the little girl clutching her grandmother's hand. They walked through the parted crowd, led by Gareth. They stopped before the dais and bowed. "Speak," Cale commanded, his voice like cracking stone. The maid spoke first. "The step, the loose one, on the north stair. Mistress Bilara never went near it, but she told the commander. He fixed it the next day. I would have fallen." She looked at Cillian, then quickly away. "A man in a silver-maned cloak offered me silver yesterday to say I saw her there that night. I was too scared to refuse." The stable boy stammered. "She told me to stay away from the black stallion, said I'd get hurt. I didn't listen at first, but the commander moved me. The next day, Jem from the smithy got kicked trying to pet him." One by one they spoke. The laundress confirmed I'd only ever asked about her husband's name to pray for him. Mara, in her small, clear voice, said, "The scary man with the shiny boots asked me to say the pretty lady gave me a sweet to go to the ice house, but she didn't. She told Granny to keep me away." The hall was deathly silent. Cale turned his gaze to the weeping servant girl who accused me. "Who gave you the silver to lie?" Trembling, she pointed a shaking finger directly at Cillian's captain of the guard. Cale's golden eyes blazed. He didn't look at Cillian. He looked at the captain. "The letters, the dagger. Confess now and your death will be clean. Lie and your family will share your fate." The captain's resolve crumbled. He fell to his knees. "It was Lord Cillian. He forged the letters. He had me plant the dagger. The poison was from his own alchemist." Chaos erupted. Cillian's face went from triumphant to ashen. "This is a farce, a conspiracy by this witch to—" "Silence!" Cale's roar shook the hall. He descended the steps, his focus entirely on Cillian. "The poison was real. My trackers found the archer's perch, just as she described. They found the alchemist who confirmed he sold wolfsbane to your man. You switched the cups. You hid the evidence. You tried to kill me, and when that failed, you tried to destroy the one who saw your truth." He stopped a breath away from Cillian. "You betrayed my father's memory. You betrayed our pact bond, and you tried to make an innocent pay for your treason." He turned to Gareth. "Take him to the deepest cell." As guards surged forward, Cillian's fear vanished, replaced by a snarl of pure hatred. His eyes, burning with malice, locked not on the king, but on me. "This isn't over," he hissed, the words meant for me alone as they dragged him away. "He can't watch you forever." The king had won. The truth was out. But as Celine fainted dramatically and was carried out, and as the crowd buzzed with shock, I felt no victory. I felt the chill of Cillian's promise. He was captured, but his hatred now was a living thing, and it had my name on it. The most dangerous enemies are not those who fight you openly, but those who have nothing left to lose. With Lord Cillian in the deepest dungeon awaiting formal sentencing, Thornhaven entered a tense, watchful peace. The Silvermane delegation, stripped of its leadership, was a hive of nervous energy. Some swore new oaths to King Cale with genuine relief. Others watched with silent, resentful eyes. The alliance was a shattered vase, glued hastily back together, its cracks visible to all. I was moved to a proper room in the family wing, one without bars on the window. A guard was still posted at my door, but now it felt more like a courtesy than a confinement. Marin brought me new clothes, simple, well-made dresses in deep blue and forest green, the colors of the Blackfang pack. "You can't wander the halls looking like a servant anymore," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "You're the seer who saved the king. You must look the part." The part felt like a costume I didn't know how to wear. I took walks in the walled gardens, always with Gareth or a watchful warrior nearby. People bowed their heads as I passed, a shallow, careful dip that spoke of awe laced with fear. They called me Lady Seer in hushed tones. The weight of the title was heavy. King Cale was a whirlwind of activity. Between overseeing the dismantling of Cillian's network, renegotiating terms with the chastened Silvermanes, and managing the ordinary burdens of rule, he was rarely seen. But sometimes, in the evening, a quiet knock would come at my door. He never stayed long. He would ask about my day, if I needed anything. The conversations were stiff at first, two people navigating the ruins of a broken conspiracy. But slowly, they softened. He told me about the challenges of ruling, the constant pressure. I spoke of the Ashwood Pack, not with nostalgia, but with the quiet cane of one who never belonged. We spoke of our burdens, his of a crown, mine of a curse, and found in that sharing a strange kind of companionship. I never saw visions when he was near. It was the only time my mind was truly, peacefully quiet.
Lady Celine was the ghost in our fragile peace. She'd been moved to a secluded suite of rooms for her comfort and safety. She was never formally accused, the evidence pointing solely at her brother. She played the grieving, betrayed sister to perfection. She wore gray, took her meals alone, and was occasionally seen walking in the most remote part of the gardens, a picture of melancholy beauty. One afternoon, our paths crossed. I was cutting through the herb garden when she appeared from behind a tall hedge of lavender, as silent as a wraith. Her eyes, the color of a winter sky, swept over me, taking in my new dress, the guard at discreet distance away. "Lady Seer," she said, her voice a soft, melodic thing. "How you have risen in the world." "Lady Celine," I nodded, my guard instinctively stepping closer. "A remarkable talent," she continued, plucking a sprig of rosemary and crushing it absently between her fingers. The sharp scent filled the air. "To see what others cannot. Tell me, do you ever see your own future?" "Visions of oneself are unclear," I said, choosing my words with care. "A pity. It might save you some trouble." She smiled then, a small, sorrowful curve of her lips that didn't touch her eyes. "My brother was always too bold, too loud. He should have known a wolf like Kael can hear a shout from miles away." She leaned in slightly, her voice dropping. "But a whisper, Lady Seer, a whisper in the dark from a trusted voice, that is a much harder thing to hear." Before I could respond, she let the crushed rosemary fall to the path. "Enjoy the sun. I fear winter comes early to the mountains." She glided away, leaving me with a cold knot in my stomach. Her words weren't a threat. They were a lesson. That night, the vision came, not of blood or poison, but of paperwork. I saw a document, a trade agreement with a southern pack. I saw Kael's bold signature at the bottom, and I saw a single looping line added to a clause about grain tariffs, a tiny, elegant alteration that would slowly, over years, bleed at the Black Fang treasury dry. I saw the hands that made the alteration, delicate and precise, wearing a silver ring set with a moonstone. Celine's ring. I went to Kael at dawn in his study. I described the vision, the document, the specific clause. He listened, his expression grim. He summoned his steward and the master of treaties. An hour of frantic searching later, they found the agreement, ready for his final seal. And there, exactly as I described, was the subtle, treasonous alteration. "It could have been a scribe's error," the steward stammered. Kael held the parchment to the light. "This is no error. This is a surgeon's cut." He looked at me, his golden eyes intense. "Did you see her hand?" I saw the ring. Celine was brought before him, the document laid bare. She looked at it, then at Kael, her eyes wide with innocent confusion. "My king, I do not understand. This is your steward's work, not mine. I've been in mourning. How could I even access such papers?" She was right. There was no proof, only my vision, and a vision against the word of a high-born lady was not enough. Kael was forced to let her go with a warning, but as she left, she paused beside me. "Such a powerful gift," she whispered, so only I could hear, "and yet so powerless against a simple truth. He cannot punish what he cannot prove." Her smile was a blade wrapped in silk. "Winter is coming, seer. Dress warmly." The victory over Killian felt hollow. He was the crashing wave. Celine was the slow rising tide, and I had just learned how easily she could seep through the cracks. The incident with the treaty changed everything and nothing. Celine remained in her gilded seclusion, a polite prisoner. Kael tightened security, trusted fewer scribes, and spent long hours with Gareth reviewing every law and trade deal signed in the last year. The fortress became a place of quiet, efficient paranoia. For me, life took on a new rhythm. Kael, realizing the strategic value of my gift beyond foiling assassinations, began to consult me formally, not in the open court, but in private councils with Gareth and his most trusted advisors. They would present a problem, a disputed border, a suspicious merchant, a noble with sudden wealth. I would listen, touch a map or a ledger, and hope for a vision. Sometimes it came, a glimpse of the merchant meeting with raiders in a forest glen, a flash of the noble accepting a bribe. More often, there was nothing. My gift remained its own master. But the times it worked, they changed how the Black Fangs saw me. The fear in their eyes was slowly being replaced by a wary respect. I was becoming a tool of the crown. It was safer than being a target, but it made my soul feel thin. The strain on Kael was visible. The boy who'd survived fire was now a king who trusted no one, who saw betrayal in every shadow. The only time the harsh lines of his face eased was during our evening talks. They were the one part of the day not governed by duty or suspicion. One evening, he didn't come. I waited, the fire dying to embers, until a soft knock came just before midnight. It was Gareth. "The king asks for you in the rose courtyard," he said, his voice unreadable. Wrapped in a cloak, I followed him. The rose courtyard was a small, enclosed space, open to the sky, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine. Kael stood in the center, looking up at the stars. He wore no crown, no armor, just a dark tunic, and he seemed younger and infinitely more tired. "Ilara," he said, not turning, "do you ever wish you could not see, that you could be blind like the rest of us?" "Every day," I answered honestly, joining him. "And then I think of Mara, the cook's granddaughter, and I know I would choose the pain of knowing over the pain of her loss." He finally looked at me. In the starlight, his eyes were less like burning gold and more like ancient amber. "That is the difference between you and them. They see power, you see people." He sighed, a heavy sound. "Celine's household is to be disbanded. She is to be sent to a remote holding in the south, under watch. It is the safest course." A cold dread, unrelated to the night air, trickled down my spine. "When?" "In 3 days' time." 3 days, the number echoed. I felt a sudden, irrational panic. "It feels like a mistake." "She's powerless here, isolated." "Snakes are most dangerous when cornered," I whispered, a fragment of an Ashwood saying. He studied my face. "You've seen something." "Not clearly. A feeling, a darkness around the number 3. I hated the vagueness of it. It was useless." To my surprise, he didn't dismiss it. He nodded slowly. "Then, for the next 3 days, you will have a second shadow. Gareth will assign Ryland to you." Ryland was young, fierce, and fiercely loyal to Gareth. The idea of a constant guardian was suffocating, but the dread in my stomach agreed with it. The next 2 days passed in a nerve-wracking calm. Rylan was a silent, looming presence. Celine was never seen. Kael was buried in preparations for her transfer. On the eve of the 3rd day, the vision struck. I was in the library, my fingers trailing over the spine of a history book, when it hit. Not a full scene, but a sensory barrage. The cloying scent of jasmine gone sickly sweet, the feel of fine, gritty powder on her fingertips, the sound of a slow, labored breath, and an overwhelming sense of triumph, cold and feminine. I jerked my hand back as if burned. Jasmine. Powder. Poison. Not a quick one, but a slow, creeping thing. My mind raced. Celine's rooms were filled with jasmine perfumes and powders. But how? She was watched. I went to Kyle, my heart hammering. It's not an attack. It's a gift. She's going to send him a gift, something he would accept, something from her as a farewell peace offering. Do not touch it. Do not let it into this keep. He believed me instantly. Orders were given. All packages, all gifts, all items from the Silvermane quarters were to be intercepted and burned without being opened. The following morning, as Celine's carriage was being prepared, a servant from her household approached Gareth. He carried a small, polished wooden box. "A gift from my lady to the king," the man said, his eyes downcast. "A rare incense from the south, to burn in his study." Gareth took the box. He didn't open it. He walked to the central fire pit in the courtyard and threw it into the flames. The box caught, cracked open, a cloud of pale, fragrant powder puffed into the fire, which burned with a sudden, eerie blue-green flame before returning to normal. The watching healers turned pale. They recognized it, a poison called dreamer's dust, inhaled or absorbed through the skin, causing a slow, sleepy descent into a coma from which one never woke. They had planned for a blade in the dark. They had prepared for a final, desperate attack. Selim had chosen a gentle, regretful murder, a final act of twisted love from a sent-away bride. When confronted, the servant broke immediately. Celine had promised him wealth, freedom. The plan was elegant. The king, working late, tired, would light the incense. By the time anyone realized he wasn't sleeping, it would be too late. Kyle stood by the fire pit, watching the last of the blue flame die. His face was stone. "Bring her to me, now." But when the guards reached her rooms, they were empty. A hidden passage, long forgotten, led from her dressing room to an old escape tunnel that emerged beyond the fortress walls. Lady Celine, the picture of fragile grief, was gone. All she left behind was the ghost of Jasmine and a chilling message scrawled on her mirror in lip color. "A crown can be stolen, but a heart must be given. You gave yours to the wrong woman, Kyle. I will remind you." She wasn't just a spurned bride seeking revenge. She was a rival queen claiming war, and she had just vanished into a kingdom full of shadows. Thornhaven went from a state of watchful peace to a war footing in the space of an hour. Gates slammed shut, scouts poured over the walls and into the mountain passes. Gareth's face was a permanent storm cloud. The betrayal was no longer just political, it was deeply, viciously personal. Celine had tried to murder the king with a whisper and a gift, and her escape was a slap to the face of every Black Fang warrior. Kyle was different. The weary vulnerability I'd glimpsed in the starlight was gone, burned away by a cold, focused fury. He was the Alpha King again, carved from ice and wrath. Councils were brief, orders were sharp. The hunt for Celine was all-consuming. In the middle of this storm, I became an anchor. Kyle, in his relentless pacing and planning, would still come to my sitting room in the late hours. He wouldn't speak of strategy then. He would sit, sometimes in silence, sometimes asking me to talk about nothing, the patterns of frost on the window, a story from my childhood. I understood. In my presence, the vision seer, he didn't have to be the king chasing a ghost. He could just be a man, clinging to a quiet moment before returning to the storm. The visions related to Celine were frustratingly opaque. I saw flashes of pine forests, the glint of a distant river, the sound of a hawk's cry, nothing that could place her. It was as if her own malice was a shield against my sight. A week after her flight, a different vision came. This one was clear, and it was immediate. I saw the Western Granary, one of the oldest wooden structures in the Outer Bailey. I saw a spilled lantern, the lick of a hungry flame catching on dry timber. I saw it happening tonight. I didn't go to Kyle. I ran to Gareth, who was in the training yard. The Western Granary, fire, tonight. It's not an accident. Gareth didn't question. He roared orders, and a unit of guards sprinted toward the western wall. I followed, my heart in my throat. As we rounded the corner, we saw it, a figure, hooded, slipping away from the granary's base. 2 guards gave chase, while others burst inside. They found 3 carefully placed fire-starting kits, timed with slow-burning cords, mere minutes from igniting a storehouse that held a third of the fortress's winter grain. It was sabotage, a distraction, or an act of war. The captured arsonist was a young, desperate-looking man from the town below. Under Gareth's grim questioning, he broke. "She paid me. A woman in a gray cloak said it was just a prank to scare the nobles." Celine was no longer just hiding. She was attacking, and she was doing it from the shadows, using the discontented and the greedy as her weapons. That night, Kyle stood over the disarmed fire kits, his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might shatter. "She's trying to show me she can reach inside my walls, that I'm not safe in my own home." He turned to me, his eyes haunted. "You are not safe either. She sees you as the cause of all this. Her message, the wrong woman." I have Rylan, though the thought sent a chill through me. It's not enough. He made a decision, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You will move into the royal wing, the chambers adjoining mine. It's the most defensible place in the fortress." It was not a request. It was the order of a king and a desperate act of a protector. To refuse would be foolish, but to accept, to sleep a wall away from him, with the whole court knowing it would change everything. I moved my few possessions that very hour. The rooms were spacious, elegant, and felt like another gilded cage. The connecting door between my sitting room and his study was a massive thing of dark oak. It was locked, but its presence was a constant, silent statement. The first night I couldn't sleep. I sat by my window watching the moon. A soft knock came at the main door. It was Kyle. He held 2 cups of steaming tea. "I can't sleep either," he said simply, offering me a cup. We sat in the silence, drinking tea, watching the same moon. No titles, no visions, no enemies. Just 2 people, trapped in a fortress of their own making, finding a sliver of peace in shared wakefulness. It became our ritual. Every night he would come. Sometimes we talked. Sometimes we just sat. The connection between us, forged in betrayal and tempered in danger, deepened in those quiet hours. It was a feeling warmer than friendship, more profound than allyship. We never gave it a name. We didn't dare. But the locked door between our rooms began to feel less like a barrier and more like a promise. Then the raven came. A week after I moved, a large black raven landed on my windowsill with a tiny silver capsule tied to its leg. My breath caught. This was how the noble houses sometimes sent secret messages. With trembling fingers, I untied the capsule. Inside the capsule was a single coiled strip of parchment. The writing was elegant, familiar. "Seer. You sit in my rooms, wear clothes from my coffers, whisper to my king. Do you dream of my life? It is a cold dream. He will always see the fire in my brother's eyes when he looks at me. He will always smell the poison in my gift. You have the vision, but you are blind. You cannot see that you are just the next weapon in his hand, and weapons, when they break, are discarded. The hunt is a diversion. Look to the heart. S." The note fell from my fingers. It wasn't a threat. It was a seed of doubt, perfectly planted. Weapons, when they break, are discarded. Was that all I was? A useful tool? The quiet nights, the shared looks, was that just a king securing his asset? And the final line,
The hunt is a diversion. Look to the heart. What heart? The heart of the fortress? His heart? My own? The seed took root. That night when Kael came for our usual quiet hour, I was distant. He noticed immediately. What's wrong? I couldn't tell him about the note. It would seem like I trusted her word over his. Nothing, just tired.
He studied me, his golden eyes seeing too much. Ilara, whatever it is. It's nothing, I insisted, forcing a smile. He left earlier than usual, the unspoken words hanging heavily between us. The seed Celine had planted was already growing, its thorny vines coiling around the fragile trust we'd built. She wasn't just attacking the fortress, she was attacking the space between us, and from her shadow, it seemed she was winning. The poison of Celine's note worked slowly and with cruel precision. I began to see things through a distorted lens. When Kael was short with the counselor, I wondered if his patience was thinning with me too. When he spent a full day with his generals and didn't summon me, the old fear of being useless, a burden, crept back in. The warm, quiet nights continued, but a chill had settled in my own heart. I tried to focus on her clue. Look to the heart. I wandered the fortress, Rylan a silent step behind, trying to feel something, see something. The heart could be the great hall, the throne room, the barracks, the kitchens. It was a riddle with no answer. Then a new vision came, not of Celine, but of Kael. He was in his study, holding a sealed letter, his face etched with a grief so profound it stole my breath. The vision shifted, and I saw an older man with Kael's golden eyes and a kind face lying pale on a bed in a sunlit room. Then a wound, not from a weapon, but from sickness, festering in the man's chest. The vision ended with a single clear word: fever root. I gasped back to the present, the taste of herbal bitterness on my tongue. Fever root. It was a rare medicinal herb, vital for treating a specific deadly lung fever that sometimes swept through the mountains. Without it, the mortality rate was high. I went to Kael immediately, interrupting a meeting with his healers. "The man with your eyes, he is sick. He needs fever root. Do you know who he is?" All color drained from Kael's face. He dismissed the healers with a sharp gesture. "Describe him." I did. The kind eyes, the strong jaw now gaunt with illness. "My uncle," Kael said, his voice rough, "Lord Theron. He rules our eastern holding at Stonehaven. A messenger arrived this morning. He has the mountain fever." He stood up, pacing. "The healers here just told me our stores of fever root are spoiled. A damp got into the herb cellar. We have none." "You must send to Stonehaven. They must have some." The message said their own stores were depleted in an outbreak last winter. They were relying on us. He slammed a fist on the table, a rare show of helpless rage. "The fastest riders would take 5 days to fetch it from the southern marshes. Theron doesn't have 5 days." The vision replayed in my mind, the festering wound, the grief on Kael's face. This was the heart, not a place, a person. The last living member of his family, the man who had stood by him after his parents died. And he was dying, not by sword or poison, but simply cruel lack of an herb. The hunt is a diversion. Look to the heart. Celine hadn't just planted doubt. She had foreseen this. She knew about the spoiled herbs. Had she caused it? Was this her true attack? Not to kill Kael, but to make him watch his last family die, helpless, while he wasted energy chasing her through the woods. It was a vengeance more subtle and more brutal than any blade. "There must be another way," I said, my mind racing. "A closer source, a traitor, something." "Gareth has already checked every apothecary in the town below. Nothing." An idea, desperate and wild, sparked. "The Ashwood lands, my old pack, the marshes on their southern border. They're closer than the southern provinces. A hard 3-day ride, but possible." Kael stopped pacing. "The Ashwoods are scattered, hostile.
They would never give aid to a Black Fang, especially not the king. They wouldn't give it to you, I said, meeting his gaze, but they might trade it with me. No. The word was absolute. It is too dangerous. I will not send you into enemy territory. You're not sending me. I am offering. This is my vision, Kale, my path. This is how my gift is meant to be used, not just to stop death, but to enable life. I stepped closer. She wants you to feel helpless, to lose what you love from afar. Don't let her. Let me do this. The conflict in his eyes was a war. The king knew it was a reckless, terrible risk. The man, watching his uncle fade, saw a single thread of hope. You would have to go alone. A small party draws less attention but is more vulnerable. And Rylan is a Black Fang. He would be recognized. Then I go alone, as an Omega healer seeking herbs. It's a common enough story. No, absolutely not. He ran a hand through his hair, agonized. If anything happened to you. If I do nothing, your uncle dies, and Celine wins a victory that will cripple you more than any battle. I placed my hand over his where it rested on the table. He turned his hand, gripping mine tightly. His eyes searched my face, looking for any sign of doubt. He found only resolve. Finally, he let out a long, slow breath, the king yielding to the man's desperate need. 3 days. You have 3 days to get there and back. If you're not at the Eastern Watchtower by dawn on the 4th, I will burn the Ashwood Marshes to the ground looking for you. Do you understand? It was a brutal promise, born of fear. I nodded. I understand. The preparations were swift and secret. At first light, disguised in a worn traveler's cloak with a healer's satchel, I slipped out of a little-used postern gate. A single, sturdy mountain pony waited for me. Kale was there, shrouded in the morning mist. He said nothing. He simply took my face in his hands, his touch speaking of fear and hope and something deeper he still wouldn't name. He pressed a small, sharp dagger in my palm. For the roots, he said, his voice thick. Come back to me, Ilara. Then I turned my pony east, toward the haunted marshes of my past, carrying the future of a king's heart on my shoulders. The hunt for Celine was a thunderous diversion. This quiet, desperate race through the wilderness, this was the real battle. The mountains gave way to rolling hills, and the hills to a flat, mist-shrouded bogland that smelled of peat and decay, the southern marshes of the Ashwood territory. Every scent, every croak of a frog was a barbed hook dragging up memories I'd buried. This was the land of my earliest visions, my first rejections, the place that sold me for a bag of silver. I traveled with my hood up, my head down, the plain pony making me just another anonymous traveler. The dagger Kale gave me was cold against my thigh. I wasn't a warrior, it felt like a lie to carry it, but his words echoed, for the roots. Fever root was a rare medicinal herb, vital for treating a specific deadly lung fever that sometimes swept through the mountains. Without it, the mortality rate was high. On the second day, I found a likely patch. Dismounting, I tied the pony to a sturdy willow and waded into the chilly, knee-deep water, my skirts soaked instantly. I scanned the reeds, my healer's knowledge guiding my eyes. There, a clump of telltale leaves. I carefully dug with my hands in the muck, feeling for the tuber. My fingers closed around it, and I used Kale's dagger to make a clean cut. A sharp whistle cut through the marsh air.
I froze, the root clutched in my muddy hand. Slowly I looked up. 3 riders emerged from the mist on the firmer ground. They wore faded ashwood greens and browns. The lead rider, a man with a familiar, cruel twist to his mouth, smirked. Well, look what the marsh coughed up, the mad little seer. My blood turned to ice. Corvin, my cousin, the one who had laughed loudest when they'd put the iron collar on me. Corvin, I said, forcing my voice steady as I stood, slipping the root and dagger into my satchel. I'm just collecting herbs. I'll be gone from your lands by nightfall. collecting herbs for your new master, the Black Fang King?" He dismounted, his two companions following suit. "We heard whispers, the Omega who sees truths, the one who stopped a wedding. You've made quite a name for yourself, traitor." "I am no traitor to a pack that sold me." "You carry his colors in your satchel, don't you? His coin?" He took a step closer, the bog squelching under his boot. "The Alpha would pay a pretty price for you. Or perhaps the silver-maned bitch he's been sniffing around our borders would pay more. She seems very interested in anyone with a grudge against the Black Fang King." Celine. She was here, or her agents were. She was weaving her web even in this forgotten swamp. "I have nothing for any of you," I said, backing toward my pony. "You have you," Corvin snarled, "a valuable commodity. Take her." The two other men lunged. Time seemed to slow. This was the moment my visions never showed, the messy, desperate middle. I didn't think, I acted. As the first man grabbed from my arm, I swung my satchel, heavy with the root and a water flask, into his face. He grunted, stumbling back. The second man caught my cloak. I twisted, letting the clasp break, slipping free. Corvin drew a short sword. "Fight all you want. It makes it more fun." I had nowhere to run but deeper into the marsh. I turned and plunged into the reeds, the cold water sucking at my legs. Shouts followed me. An arrow whizzed past my ear, sinking into a peat mound with a thwack. Panic was a live thing in my chest. I was no runner, no fighter. I was a seer, drowning in a bog. My foot caught on a submerged root and I went down hard, murky water filling my mouth. I surfaced, gasping, to see Corvin wading toward me, his sword raised. Then a new sound, a deep grumbling growl that vibrated in the very air. A massive shadow-gray wolf erupted from the mist behind Corvin. It was bigger than any ashwood wolf, its fur dark as a storm cloud, its eyes blazing gold. Kale. He didn't go for the kill. He barreled into Corvin, sending the man flying into the water. The two other Ashwoods turned, drawing weapons, but froze at the sight of the enormous alpha wolf now, standing between them and me, his lips peeled back from teeth as long as my fingers. Kale shifted back in a ripple of power, standing waist-deep in the water, naked but for the sheer, terrifying authority he wore like armor. "Touch her again," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "and I will tear your pack apart from the inside out. You will watch your alpha die before I let you follow him." Corvin scrambled back. Fear replaced cruelty on his face. The Black Fang King here in their marsh? It was an impossibility, a nightmare. "Take your men and go back to your holes. Tell your alpha that the Omega Ilara is under my protection. If any Ashwood so much as looks at her with ill intent, I will consider it an act of war." They didn't need to tell him twice. They fled, scrambling for their horses, leaving us alone in the silent, dripping marsh. Kale turned to me. The fury on his face melted into raw, undisguised fear. "You were supposed to be at the watchtower tomorrow," he breathed, wading toward me. "But I felt your panic through the bond we shouldn't have." He cupped my muddy, wet face. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, tears mixing with the marsh water on my cheeks. I fumbled in my satchel and held up the muddy orange fever root. "I got it." He stared at the root, then at me, and a sound that was half laugh, half sob escaped him. He pulled me into a fierce, crushing embrace, right there in the cold water. "You incredible, foolish, brave woman," he murmured into my hair. "I thought I'd lost you." Held against him, the terror of the chase melted away. He had come. He had felt my fear across miles. The seed of doubt Celine planted withered and died in that moment. A weapon was not followed into a swamp by its master. A tool was not held like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. He had come for me. "Your uncle," I mumbled into his chest. "He will live thanks to you," he said, pulling back just enough to look at me. He shrugged out of his own soaked cloak and wrapped it around my shoulders. "Now, let's go home. We have a root to deliver and a poisonous spider to finally crush." As he led me back to where his own warhorse was hidden, I realized the truth. Celine had told me to look to the heart, thinking it was his uncle. She was right, but she was also wrong. The heart she should have targeted wasn't in Stonehaven. It was here, beating wildly in my own chest, and it belonged, irrevocably, to him. The return to Thornhaven was not a quiet homecoming. It was a declaration. We rode through the gates together, me wrapped in the king's cloak, him a protective, stormy presence at my side. I held the precious fever root like a scepter. Word of our arrival, and more importantly of the king's dramatic rescue in the marshes, spread through the fortress like wildfire. The story grew with each telling, the seer's bravery, the king's fury, the bond that spanned miles. Lord Theron's life was saved. The healers prepared the fever root, and within a day the deadly fever broke. The news lifted a tangible weight from Cale's shoulders. The last thread of his family was secure. Gratitude shone in his eyes whenever they met mine, a silent, profound language that needed no words. But Celine's shadow remained. Her agents had been in the marshes. She knew I had left the safety of the fortress. Her game had changed. She was no longer just a hidden threat. She was a humiliated one. A cornered predator is the most dangerous kind. The vision that came 3 nights later was the clearest and most terrifying I had ever received. I saw the royal chapel, a small, ancient building within the inner ward where Cale would go alone sometimes at night to think. I saw Celine, not as a ghost, but solid and real, waiting in the shadows of the altar. She held no weapon. Instead, she held a small, ornate vial, and she was not waiting for Cale.
She was waiting for me. The vision showed her dropping the vial, a clear, odorless liquid splashing onto the stone floor. It showed me entering, drawn by a forged note, my feet stepping into the liquid. And then it showed the consequence. Not instant death, but a creeping, total paralysis. A living statue, aware but trapped, to be displayed as her ultimate trophy. Her final whisper, "See, I told you he would let you walk into my trap." I woke gasping, the cold sweat of prophecy on my skin. This was her endgame, not to kill Cale, but to take from him the one thing he had come to value, to break his spirit by breaking me in the most grotesque way possible, to prove her power over the future I saw. I went to Cale immediately, not in secret but openly, marching into his war council. I described the vision, every detail. The room fell silent, his commanders looking from me to him. "It's a trap for you, Alara," Gareth stated the obvious, his face grim. "But the location is real," Cale said, his voice low and deadly. "The chapel. She's there, or will be. She's using the vision itself as the bait, counting on you to warn me, counting on us to storm the place." He leaned over the map of the fortress. "She'll have an escape route, and archers. She'll try to pick us off as we charge in. Then we don't charge," I said softly. Everyone looked at me. "We give her what she expects, but not the way she expects it." The plan was born from desperation and a deep, newfound understanding of my own gift. We would use the vision against her. We would let the future she saw begin to unfold, and then we would twist it. The forged note arrived at my door an hour later, as I knew it would. It purported to be from Marin, asking me to come to the chapel to bless a newly woven altar cloth. It was her style, but the scent of jasmine clinging to the parchment was Celine's signature. I showed it to Cale. "I'm going." His hand gripped mine, Every warrior I have will be in place. Every arrow will be aimed. But if you step 1 foot in that liquid, I won't, I promised, a plan of my own forming in my heart. Trust me. As night fell, the fortress pretended to sleep. I walked alone across the inner ward, the note in my hand, my heart a drum in my chest. I could feel 100 hidden eyes on me, Gareth's archers on the walls, Cale's best warriors concealed in shadows. The air was thick with tension. I pushed open the heavy oak door of the chapel. Candles flickered on the altar, casting long, dancing shadows. And there she was, just as I had seen. Selene stepped from behind a pillar, beautiful and terrible in a gown of moonlight gray. In her hand was the ornate vial. "Lady Seer," she said, her voice a silken mockery, "you came. I knew you would. The hero, rushing to her own downfall." "It ends tonight, Selene," I said, staying just inside the doorway. "Oh, it ended for me the moment he chose a slave over a queen," she hissed, her composure cracking to show the madness beneath. "But tonight, I choose how the story is written." She held up the vial. "Do you know what this is? Still water. 1 drop and your body becomes a prison for your mind. You will watch, helpless, as I take back everything, starting with him." She uncorked the vial and poured it onto the stone flags before the altar. The clear liquid spread, almost invisible in the candlelight. The trap was set. "Now," she said, her eyes gleaming, "come here, or I'll scream and tell the guards I attacked you. They'll rush in and slip. Such a tragic accident." This was the moment from my vision, the moment to step forward, but I didn't move. "You're wrong, Selene," I said, my voice steady. "You think my gift is a burden, but you don't understand it. I don't just see a future. I see the future born from the choices being made right now." Her smile faltered. "The vision I had, that was the future where I was afraid, where I let your poison infect my mind as well as my feet, where I walked in because I believed I had to. I took a step, not forward, but to the side, skirting the edge of the spreading liquid, moving along the wall. But I made a different choice. I chose to trust him, and he chose to trust me." Confusion, then fury crossed her face. "This changes nothing. You're trapped in here with me." She reached into the folds of her gown and pulled out a thin, wicked dagger. But she had misjudged everything. The door didn't burst open with charging warriors. The high, stained glass window behind the altar did. With a crash of shattering glass, Cale descended into the chapel, not as a man, but as the great shadow-gray wolf. He landed between Selene and me, a living wall of fury. At the same moment, the side door flew open, and Gareth charged in, not from the front where the liquid was, but from the sacristy, grabbing Selene from behind and wrenching the dagger from her hand. She screamed, a raw sound of utter defeat. "You knew! You both knew!" Cale shifted back, standing tall. "We knew," he said, his voice colder than the mountain peaks. "Because she saw you, and she told me, and I believed her." He looked at the spilled poison, then at her. "Your whispers are done, Selene. Your diversions are over. You are accused of treason, attempted murder, and crimes against the crown. Your fate is sealed." As Gareth bound her hands, she stared at me, her eyes burning with a hatred so pure it was almost awe-inspiring. "You win nothing," she spat. "You will always be the seer, the tool. The moment you fail, he will see you as I do, a useless mistake." Cale stepped in front of me, blocking her view. "Take her away," he commanded Gareth, "to the black cell. She will see no sun again." As she was dragged away, her screams fading into the night, the sudden silence in the chapel was deafening. The candles guttered. The threat was gone. Cale turned to me. The fierce anger drained from his face, leaving behind something vulnerable and fierce all at once. He looked at the dangerous patch on the floor, then back at me. "You didn't step in it. I told you I wouldn't. You circled the walls like a besieging army," he said, a faint, amazed smile touching his lips. Then it faded. What she said about you being a tool, you know that's not. I stepped over the safe stones and stopped before him, placing a hand on his chest, over the steady, strong beat of his heart. I know, I whispered. A tool doesn't change the future. A partner does.
He covered my hand with his golden eyes holding mine. In them, I saw the fire survivor, the lonely king, and the man who had waded into a swamp for me. The last walls crumbled, not with a crash, but with a sigh. He leaned his forehead against mine, and we stood there in the shattered chapel, surrounded by the ruins of her malice and the unshakable foundation of what we had built together. The final whisper in the night belonged not to betrayal, but to us, and it was a promise, silent, sure, and forever. They held the trial for Celine at noon, under the bright, impartial sun. It was swift and just. With her own confession in the chapel and the testimony of the captured arsonist and the bribed servant, there was no defense. The sentence was lifelong exile to a barren, fortified island in the northern sea, guarded by warriors loyal only to the crown. She would live, but the world of power and whispers she craved was gone forever. As she was led away, her head was finally bowed, not in repentance, but in absolute defeated silence. With her removal, the last poison seeped from Thornhaven. The Silvermane pack, under new leadership chosen from their own loyal ranks, formally reaffirmed their alliance with the Black Fangs, this time with clear terms and open hearts. The Shadow War was over. Weeks turned into months. Winter's grip on the mountains slowly loosened, replaced by the gentle, persistent touch of spring. And Thornhaven, once a fortress of stone and suspicion, blossomed. The changes were no longer just about security, they were about soul. A proper school was established in the Outer Bailey, not just for warriors' children, but for any child who wished to learn. I spent hours there, not as a seer, but as a teacher, helping little ones with their letters. Their laughter was a better balm than any prophecy. The Council of Seers was formally instituted. I sat at its head, not as a queen, but as an advisor. We were a small group, an old beta who dreamed of weather patterns, a young omega who sensed shifts in the earth, and others with faint, untrained gifts. We didn't claim to have all answers. We offered perspectives. For the first time in generations, the unseen was given a voice in the rule of the pack. Kale was transformed. The cold, isolated king was still there when needed, in counsel or judgment, but the man who walked the gardens with me, who laughed at the antics of the castle hounds, who listened with rapt attention as a farmer explained a new irrigation method, that was the man who emerged. The weight of the crown remained, but he no longer bore it alone. One evening, on the first true day of spring, he found me in the library. I was looking at a book of pressed mountain flowers. He took the book from my hands and set it aside. "Come with me," he said, his eyes alight with a secret. He led me up, past the family wing, to a part of the fortress I had never seen, a high, open turret, its stone balustrade wreathed in budding ivy. Below, the whole of Thornhaven and the awakening valley spread out like a living tapestry. The setting sun painted the snow-capped peaks in rose and gold. "Ilara," he began, turning to face me, the wind gently tugging at his dark hair. "When you first knelt before me, a whisper in a crowd, you gave me a truth that saved my life. In the days that followed, you gave me something far more valuable. You gave me back my trust. You saw the worst in people, and you still chose to see the good. You saw the darkest futures, and you still fought for a brighter one." He took my hands in his. His were warm, strong, calloused from sword and pen alike. "You taught a king how to be a man. You taught a fortress how to be a home. My heart, which survived fire and betrayal, did not know it was incomplete until you filled it." He reached into his tunic and pulled out a simple, exquisite ring. It was a band of polished black iron, like the stone of his fortress, but inlaid with a single continuous thread of the purest gold, encircling it completely. It was us, the strength of the Black Fang forever intertwined with the light of the seer. "I do not offer you a crown of gold and gems," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That is not who we are. I offer you this, a band of our shared strength, a promise of my unwavering heart, and a question." He went down to one knee, there on the high turret, with the whole kingdom as his witness. "Ilara, my seer, my partner, my heart, will you build this future with me, not as my queen in a palace, but as my equal, by my side, in the home we have made together? Will you marry me?" Tears of pure, undiluted joy streamed down my face, carried away by the spring breeze. There was no shadow of a vision, no whisper of doubt. There was only this perfect, real, breathtaking moment. I saw not the future, but the present, and it was more beautiful than any prophecy. "Yes," I breathed, the word of vow. "Yes, Kale, 1,000 times yes." He slid the ring onto my finger. It fit as if it had always been there. He stood and gathered me into his arms, and for the first time, with no threat hanging over us, with no walls between us, he kissed me. It was a kiss of desperate passion, but of profound promise, sweet, gentle, and as enduring as the mountains around us. When we finally parted, foreheads resting together, the first star appeared in the lavender sky. "What do you see?" he whispered, his lips against my temple. I looked out at our kingdom, at the lights beginning to twinkle in the town below, at the peaceful, sleeping fortress. I looked at the ring on my finger, and then into his golden eyes, where I saw my own reflection, loved and sure. "I see home," I said, and it was the truest vision I had ever spoken. Our wedding was held not in the great hall, but in the sun-drenched inner courtyard, now a riot of spring flowers. The entire pack was there, from the highest lord to the lowliest kitchen maid. Mara scattered petals before me. Gareth stood as Kale's witness, a rare smile on his scarred face. Marin fussed happily with my simple gown of cream-colored wool, the black and gold ring my only adornment. We spoke our vows under an arch of woven willow and blooming hawthorn, promising not power or obedience, but partnership, trust, and a shared commitment to the future. When Kale kissed me as his wife, a cheer went up that shook the very foundations of Thornhaven, a sound not of fear or awe, but of pure communal joy. As the music started and the feasting began, Kale led me to the center of the courtyard for the first dance. He held me close, his hand warm on my back. "No more whispers of betrayal," he murmured in my ear. "Only whispers of love," I replied, resting my head on his shoulder. And as we danced under the spring stars, surrounded by the laughter and love of our pack, I knew this was the happy ending that no vision could have ever fully captured. It wasn't an ending at all. It was the first beautiful, sun-drenched page of our forever.